What is considered honorable that really shouldn't be? Honestly, beating up any person that is a threat to others. Yes, beating up is important here. I've thought about it a lot, and I hope I never have to do it. I'm a martial artist. If I had to, I'd try to get a joint lock done first, painful, and restrict movement. Not really sure when was the last time that someone beat up a shooter etc. in public, but glorifying it should stop. I don't see any good in beating people up, even criminals. Unless is self-defense. My father told me when I was little, never beat anyone, just in self-defense or protection of loved ones. One of the few good things he has ever said to me. Unless is self-defense. My father told me when I was little, never beat anyone, just in self-defense or protection of loved ones. That's kinda what I was talking about. Even in self-defense, I'd much rather gain control of the situation in some other way. Maybe a weakening strike to the stomach or knee, then preferably a joint lock, as mentioned above. Of course, it is not always possible. Constantly sacrificing your well-being and personal preferences to accommodate other people. All it gets you is, "Oh, they're such a nice person, they'd give you the shirt off their back." Imagine if more people did it though. You don't try and be a good person for a reward, you do it because it's the only way to make the world decent. We could all stand to be less self-involved and less selfish. We could all stand to be less self-involved and less selfish. Compulsive people pleasers that don't know how to set healthy boundaries because they were brought up by parents with attitudes like yours would disagree. Caring about yourself isn't selfish. Put on your own mask before you assist others. The world being too selfish isn't on any one person to solve. Selfishness isn't a zero-sum game that can be fought with selflessness. Give, yes, but when you give and never get, then it's time to consider giving to yourself. You're important too, and acknowledging yourself as an important person isn't self-involved. Prolonging the life of your loved one when they are suffering. Measuring your love for someone by how long you were able to keep them alive is not honorable. If they have no chance of survival, that is if they have even a 10% chance, I'll take it. As someone working in the medical field who have seen full codes done on 80-year-olds, there's a time and a place for life-saving measures. No one should be subjected to misery to save their lives, only to live miserably after the fact. Let the dead rest. Someone's grandma getting their ribs broken during core isn't something you forget, and watching people who should be at home peacefully passing away suffer because of that 10% is just cruel. Everyone has the right to a peaceful death when possible. Do everything you can. I'd read those words when the patient was very elderly or terminal. Just because we can't keep the body alive doesn't mean we should. Sacrificing your whole life for your parents. I would also say going overboard on sacrificing for your kids. Some parents wear it as a badge of honor to destroy themselves to show other people how good of parents they are. If your kids are fed, clean, and happy, take some time for yourself. Don't be a martyr. As in, it should be considered normal, or a person shouldn't let their parents' problems sink them. As in, when parents expect a child to not move away, make independent life choices, and to completely support them financially in their old age. My great-aunt never married, and took care of her mother until her mother died at 101 years. My great-aunt lived another 10 years, could never have a career, was engaged to a guy for many years, but never married, because she was expected to take care of the parent at for great-aunt. I might get heat for this, but serving in the military 9 times out of 10, chances are you will not see combat, you will have your school paid for, and receive a pension for the rest of your life when you retire. It's a great opportunity if you lack options out of high school, but I'm not going to kiss the ground you walk on. I have known a lot of people in the military, and none of them joined to die for Americans' freedoms. They joined because it's a job with perks that benefit them. That narrative might be drastically different if we were fighting conflicts in which we were actually defending ourselves. Say that last bit again, a little louder for the folks in the back. Most of them don't want you to kiss the ground they walk on. Fighting a war in a sovereign country. Far too many people believe in the Mockingbird-style propaganda in the cable and internet media, which is used to justify invasion after invasion in other countries. Far too few people realize that such wars are meant to spread Western corporate influence around the world by creating proxy governments that will accept any free trade agreement, no matter how harmful or destructive they are to those countries and their communities. Killing off millions of people by literally destroying their livelihoods Yemen currently, and destroying the sovereignty of other countries, because you believe in the propaganda of your own country at face value, is not an honorable thing. Doing the wrong thing for false reasons is not honorable. The captain always goes down with the ship, but should he be morally obligated to effectively commit suicide? The actual common view is that the captain should be the last off. I kinda understand the feeling, that ship is my life, so I'll die with it, but yeah, pretty messed up. Lol, the ship isn't any seaman's life, it's a job. I was thinking about pirates, but they can think this way too. The captain doesn't always go down with the ship. I mean, captain does have legal responsibility for the ship, so abandoning a ship has legal consequences. In general, the captain abandoning ship is not illegal under international maritime law. Protecting criminals, not snitching. The thought of not snitching wasn't really to protect criminals, but to protect PPL from harassment the American justice system puts people through. Maybe, but that's also how terrible people get away with doing terrible things. I won't deny that it's a flawed belief. I don't think criminals expect that from non-criminals, and in that sense a criminal is a hypocrite for running to the cops. It matters. If they are a hitman, sure, but if they are just selling, you're a complete loser. Going to work sick. Thanks for getting us sick, tough guy, you're so strong and committed. Extra dishonor when said work is food service. Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your cow. To be fair, if you work in the US, calling in sick is highly discouraged, and some places will even fire you for it. I work in the US and maybe my company is different, but leadership makes it very clear to use your sick days if needed. I would venture to guess most legit companies would get in trouble legally for firing a guy who gets the flu. Going to war to fight on behalf of a country that started going downhill since after Teddy Roosevelt. I might also add violence in general for any cause, good or bad, doesn't make you look better. As you can tell, the war on terror hasn't resolved anything, and neither has the Civil War. The Crusades were UN needed, and so was the crucifixion. Power without control on oneself, or without a greater cause, means nothing until millions are slaughtered and the so-called greater good turns into immorality and leader has become a monster. Having any sort of admiration for thugs, gangsters, gangster mentality, it's cringe. Gangbangers are cringe. Kono Jayano Javanani Wayungaeru. Gangstar. How is this considered honorable? In Russian countries it's a code of conduct among many people. It stems from Russian TV series like Brigadier and Smirky among others. It's completely fabricated, toxic and destructive to the social fabric. Being a police officer, the amount of times someone's life has been ruined by the police and nothing was done about it is just shocking. 40% of US, I'm pretty sure, cops are involved in domestic abuse. The war on drugs is a complete failure, especially since legalization of drugs would be much more effective at reducing their damage, and it has in no way positively influenced anyone's lives. Think about where we'd be without the 60% of good cops. The refusal to change your viewpoint when confronted with evidence that disproves it, it's my opinion, isn't a valid excuse to be flat out wrong, and it doesn't make you a strong person to refuse to take another look at your beliefs. I think it would help if we could all understand and agree on the difference between fact and opinion. 100%. I see them confused way too often. Call out culture. 99% of the time it is an excuse to start drama or bully someone, especially when it's an already extremely unpopular opinion. This has happened to me a lot. People try to act morally superior by calling people out when in reality they're just looking for an excuse to bully someone, ironically making them morally worse than the person they're calling out. Not sleeping or not taking care of yourself. You mean like when people glorify doing all-nighters and working themselves to the bone? I worked an 85-hour week over the past 6 days. Good for you on your unhealthy choices. When I mention how little sleep I got and how many hours I put in, I'm not bragging, I'm begging for help. Being a radical activist, People glorify forms of uncivil behavior simply because they are doing it for a good cause, attacking people physically for their political beliefs, damaging property of said people, etc. We should not be taught to solve our problems by attacking others, especially over things we don't need to fight over anymore. Dying in wars, when it was the people in power who created the issue. This applies to all people in all countries. I mean, no disrespect to veterans or those currently in the military. I'm more upset that they were used as virtually pawns. You shouldn't have to sacrifice your life for hidden agendas. Disowning your kids for being with people they want instead of what you as a parent want. Yes, in some cultures parents still disown, threaten to for this alone to preserve their own honor. Some parents think they own a kid, like they are a living human and need to make their own decisions. I'm Filipino and I have to say it's leaving your family to work abroad. They treat overseas foreign workers OFWs like heroes here. It's just a ruse from the government because they help the economy with the dollar influx. I think it's more honorable to live simply while staying with your family. Graduating high school. Yeah, woohoo, big step in my life for me, except literally everyone does it. Come on, celebrate the fact that I've got a solid plan for what I'm doing for the next 3 to 6 years. I find it strange that when a pregnant woman goes to the hospital for any reason, the first priority is the baby. Doctors of Reddit, is there any exception to this rule, or is it different depending on the medical team? Over and over in this thread are working too hard and joining the military. I just came here to say, there's so much truth to both of those. Something's off with the transaction the two of those gets you in America. Staying together for the kids, it's just setting the example that it's acceptable to stay in a loveless relationship rather than live apart and co-parent as happy individual people. Finishing all your food on your plate, unless the one who plated the food has an excellent sense of the portion you need for your activity. This can be very self-destructive. In sports, jumping off the bench to enter a melee for your team since when is escalating unnecessary violence is a good thing. Being called a hero just for being in the military, most of them have desk jobs and aren't to combat in dangerous areas. Standing your ground. Sometimes you need to accept that you're wrong and take up a different perspective. Fighting in war. It's a great deed in theory. In practice there is a lot of collateral damage. Staying in a broken marriage. If they cheat on you or otherwise disrespect you, leave them. Being mad about how a guy flirts, talks with you while he has a girlfriend. Winning a war. It's like, yes, we killed them, let's have a party. Being polite to everybody. This should just be a common occurrence. Taking care of a toxic relative for the simple reason of being family. Sully flying a plane into the Hudson River during an emergency. How can she slap? How can you slap? Always being the first to apologize. Killing lots of people during a war.